Hi, everyone, and welcome to another day of our Live Yoga Off the Mat Summit, where we are exploring how to tap into our inner stillness and cultivate joy and gratitude in any circumstance during the day. I'm Urška Umek, and today Katy Appleton is here with us. Founder and director of Apple Yoga. She brings to yoga more than 25 years of expertise in movement through ballet, Pilates, body tuning, breath, and energy work. She is an internationally recognized teacher of Vinyasa Flow and is known for bringing the true essence of yoga alive in a student's body and mind in creative, dynamic, and life-transforming ways. And she is also creator of Apple Yoga School, running life-transforming teacher trainings, Apple Adventure worldwide retreats, and online courses. And she has published several yoga books and award-winning DVDs for home practice. And it's a real blessing to have you here today. Welcome, Katy.
Oh, and the blessing is all mine. Thank you, Urška. It was lovely to be invited. Namaste, everybody.
So can we just start by you telling us a bit how you actually came in contact with yoga and how it evolved so that you do what you do now?
Yes, absolutely. It would be my pleasure to share how I came in contact with yoga. I would say that I came in contact with yoga literally in my mama's womb. She did yoga when she was pregnant with me. And so I suppose it's like, in utero, that sense of calm and peacefulness and connection. And then my mum wasn't a yoga teacher. She was just a lover of yoga in the early 70s when I was born. And I remember going to a few classes as a child because, that's what you did, just take your kid with you and most of the time to lots of things. So I remember being surrounded by adults doing lots of stretching. And she went to Iyengar. I mean, we have such an abundance of yoga gifts out there these days. But, back in the 70s, there was the real classic styles of yoga. So she was an Iyengar student and enjoyed that with a lovely lady that would live locally to her. So that's how I first got in contact with yoga. And then the second part, Urška, tell me exactly what else you wanted to know so I can be clear with that.
Yeah, just how everything you're practicing evolved then so that you started teaching and...
Sure. Well, I suppose, I didn't continue to do yoga as a kid, really. It was just those few moments that I remember. But my first real passion was movement and the desire to connect and to feel. Actually, I'm definitely a person that moves in the world as a feeling body rather than a thinking body primarily. My primary function is from the heart. And I wanted to move, and it became very obvious that dancing was something that I was very passionate about. And my parents are farmers, so they don't really know anything about that. And two older brothers, 7 and 8 years older than me, there wasn't anything in the family, so to speak, in terms of that kind of thread. So I went along as a kid to some dance classes in a local village hall, and it was only until I was 9 years old that I met a dance teacher at a new academic school, and did sort of after curriculum lessons, that this woman said to my mum, your daughter really does have talent, she should perhaps take this further. And so from that moment I had really someone that was guiding me, that actually could see talent and guide me in it. So my path was then set, and obviously the desire, the passion, the intention to do this was there, but I also aesthetically was the right body, the right shape to be able to, and good enough talent to be able to further this. So actually from the age of 11, I left home and went to the Royal Ballet School and lived away from home to study ballet. And I started dancing professionally at the age of just 17, and then had a sort of 12-year career, almost, I would say, roughly, in dance. And I suppose yoga came into my field of awareness again in terms of the desire to, and the need to, in fact, rebalance my life, because obviously a dancer's life is a little bit haphazard. Actually, it's late nights, it's very demanding on the body, it can be taxing on the mind, there can be a lot of mind games with directors and things like that, and I was pretty fatigued internally on that and needed to find something to connect. And so I ended up going along to a free class that I saw in the paper at the Shivananda Center, just saying free yoga class near my local area that I lived in London. And that's where it began again for me. And I sort of found something really special in not needing to give movement out, but keep it for myself and watch the internal process. So I would say probably around the age of 24, 25, something like that, I found yoga again as an adult and started to really soak in the benefits that I found from it. And I did it parallel to my dance career for a little while. And then I took a break, a sabbatical from my dance career, just to sort of like assess things, because I had a director that was demanding in the psychology department, and I was a bit over him, to be honest with you. And I wanted to go and find something that really nourished my soul. And so I did a yoga teacher training course in '98 through the Shivananda realm, because I didn't really know an awful lot of other styles. And that's where it began for me, actually. And I did go back to dance after that, but it was more my curtain call, my final farewell. It was a kind of thing of whether I would actually do that and I would stay in dance, or I'd actually go into teaching. And when I did that final sort of like 6-month tour of the world with my company, English National Ballet, it became very, very obvious where my love lay then, which was in the connection to something that was going to resource me hugely and nurture and hold me, and something that I could spread out to people as well. I'd already just started teaching a little bit, and I could see the ripple effect, and I was really excited by that offering. And that's where it started for me, to be honest with you. Yeah.
And do you remember, while you were practicing yoga, on the mat and everything, was there any specific moment that you really realized how this practice is influencing, other areas of your life, how you started to respond to different situations, or was it, step by step?
I would say to begin with, it was very step by step, because I was just a human being walking along with a lot of conditioned identity. I was a ballet dancer, and then all of a sudden I was this yoga teacher. And, I think it was very step by step to begin with. And then probably around 12, 13, 14 years ago, something like that, I ended up going on a sort of spiritual quest. Like I'd been doing the step by step and feeling the benefits of the internal body, knowing that I felt more calm and peaceful, but it wasn't like one dynamic big opening. So I could see how it benefited others from, offering it through teaching, and the joy of that. So I could see that difference, but it was obvious, but it wasn't something that was kaboom. Mm-hmm. And I ended up doing a spiritual quest in India. I was like, right, I'm off. I want to go and do Vipassana. I want to go and do all of these different things and experience them for myself, because I'd never done a year out, a gap year we often have in the UK, where children go away after they're sort of 18 or something of their studies and go and spend time traveling the world. I'd never done that, because I was very steeped in my dance. And so I'd traveled, but I'd never really experienced time for myself. And so I was really ready and really hungry for it. And so I was probably like 29, 30, 31, something like that. And I ended up being in India for 3 months. And I ended up in lots and lots of different places. But the place that I landed in for a long time was a place called Osho's Ashram in Pune. And I did a lot of internal work and sort of dialoguing and all sorts of things that were very unusual to me, of decoding stuff. And I was very intrigued by that. And I found it very difficult actually to come back into the world, the normal marketplace, after that experience. But I remember the pull of wanting to go back again. So the following year I did go back, but I didn't end up in Osho's Ashram. In fact, I ended up exactly where I was supposed to end up, with meeting my spiritual teacher, a woman called Ananta Kranti. And I ended up in satsang with her. I was very into Eckhart Tolle at the time, and the book Stillness Speaks, and it very much resonated with me. And The Power of Now is kind of really at the cusp of that time. And I remember being in satsang for 5 days with her, and I had at that point my biggest awakening to really the truth of what on earth this is all about. And I remember I remember for at least 3 months after that period of time coming home and feeling like, I don't know if you've seen the film Riksha, The Matrix,
Mm-hmm.
with Keanu Reeves, and
Yes.
I remember feeling like Neo in The Matrix, like understanding like all that was going on around me. Like I could feel this radiant truth and this pulsation of who I truly was. And it wasn't just something that I'd read intellectually in a yoga book through studies. It was something that I could tangibly feel. And I understood what the mind waves were. I understood where identity got hooked. And it was so fascinating to live in this big awakened place. And then, of course, life comes in, my relationship broke down, trauma came into my body, and all sorts of things that, is normal in our human conditioning. And obviously, life becomes different again. Contraction comes back in, and we become identified to sensations and emotions and so on. But yes, that was my big moment where I was like, okay, it's broad to say this, but if I die now, I actually understand what's going on, which was my quest, really, and I'm satisfied. And so 12 to 14 years of living that experience and bringing it into my life has allowed me to become the teacher that I've become, and offer the way that I create the transmission that I do, because it comes from that dynamic ground of stillness, or that dynamic ground of joy, that I can tap into, which includes the humanness, includes the crazy, I call it, the crazy, the beauty and the difficulty. And so, yes, there's nothing extra special about this body. It's just there's a realization in it, and that I'm able to sort of, at times when I feel connected, very much so, and it takes due diligence on my behalf to stay in that space of connection. It's not just something I can sort of walk around in all day long, because I have 2 young children, so they, there's a great demand in life. But yeah, I suppose that was my big awakening, and then the sort of continuing of that afterwards.
Yeah, beautiful. And what do you think? What is it about yoga and meditation that makes us feel that good, that helps us to reconnect with these states of inner joy, and to connect us again with the inner stillness? What is it about these techniques, or the whole art of it?
I think when we can understand, or when we can connect to this space of dynamic ground and stillness, that I think even if people don't realize it, it's something that is unchanging. And I was speaking to students. I've just run a retreat, literally just came back last night, and I was speaking about this. And I think what happens is in our identity is that we get attached to the surface layers of what we think we are. And so disruption and difficulty arise because we get attached to this body that's, constantly in change, and sometimes quite rapidly, and sometimes not in a way that we have potentially been conditioned from the outside, that we want to have this lovely, perfect body forever and ever. And so many other things. So we're conditioned to attach to thoughts and feelings and claim them to be ourselves. And so we get sort of misidentified inside of that, because it's humanness, and and it's part of our sort of journey as a human being. And so I think what occurs when we do practices such as meditation is that we drop into this space of stillness that's unchanging. It will never change. It's always present. It's been present before this body, your body, everybody's body took on this form and identity and post-it notes and all of the different things that we now claim to be us. For me, and for the people that I work with, and for many people that I don't actually know, it's a sense of coming home, and it's unwavering. It's never going to let us down. So there's a security in that is unfathomable, and that we can trust in and we can depend upon. And so I think that, that's what people, well, not I think, I know that's what people meet. And so there's a reassurance in that, and a relief that they don't have to look anymore. you know, for something outside that's going to make them happy, that they can just go in, and it's nothing to find. You don't have to even go on a retreat to find it, but sometimes one has to be directed to that place in order to place value in it, actually. And once you start to place value in it, which requires, you know, a certain practice, you know, it's a daily or a regular practice of connecting to that. Because if we don't do that regular connection and place value in that space of dynamic ground of stillness or joy, then the mind and its beauty and mayhem is going to just start to connect to what's on the surface layers. And that's where our attention will attune to. So then we get caught in, you know, the positive and the negative, and we get dragged in around this place and trying to find our identity in that. And I think it's just a sort of misunderstanding. So people can have an awakening and a realization, but then the due diligence thereafter does need to occur, especially in the marketplace of life, you know, because there's so much going on in the marketplace of life these days that pulls us out. There's so many things, computers, you know, magazines, you've got to look like this, you've got to look like that, or just life in general, the everyday life, that it's important to place value in taking some time out to nurture the connection into that space of dynamic ground of stillness.
Yes.
And so then we can call upon it when we really need it, when the life has thrown us curveballs, and we can stay in that space of stillness, even though life is really like full and dynamic with lots of challenges, traumas, joys, and things like that we aren't supposed to be immune to, because we're emotional beings and we need to feel. But yet we can not get so hooked in potentially. And that's, you know, obviously a difficult thing to say, because you know, there's a lot that we get hooked into as a human being, and some of it very rightly so as well, you know, for our sort of uncovering of life and, you know, our sort of existence.
Yeah. And what do you usually do when you don't have a lot of time, or maybe you are, you know, outside, you know, in a shop or in a car? What is the most effective thing for you that you do if in that circumstances you start to feel the overwhelm coming? Yes. And the thoughts starting to, you know, just jump yes. around?
Yes, well, it's a daily thing for me. You know, there's a toolbox that I would use for sure. So if I'm in the car, and obviously I need to function and make sure that everybody arrives where they're going as safely as, often I will chant, because I find that one way to connect me to the bhakti state, to the devotional state. So it can be something simple like the toning sounds of Om, Ah, Ooh, and then linking them together, and then perhaps one sound in its own right, So that's a technique that I tend to use. That's a kind of one that I need to stay alert, and I'm in a sort of like enclosed space. I could do it out walking in nature with my kids and stuff like that, but I might get some strange looks. If I was at home and had a little bit of time, but not much, inversions really help. So just putting the body, the mind, the head, the brain upside down. So often a standing forward bend, Uttanasana, and then putting the back body against the wall rather than the back of the buttocks against the wall. I turn to face the wall and curl in and put the back of my sort of head or back of my spine against the wall. And for somebody that had tight hamstrings, tight back of legs, then they can bend the knees, because it's actually not about the stretch of the hamstrings. It's more about the inversion of head lower than heart, which moves into a physiological change, which allows the system to start to slow down again and give it more space. It's called the parasympathetic state. And it, you know, changes the way that we act in the world. We're not in what's called fight flight, which many of you may know about, which is more of a reactive state of being. We're in more of a receptive state of being. So I find, you know, and literally you could be in it like a minute and a half. It's about 90 seconds for the nervous system to switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic. So if I was inverted, I would just be breathing and comfortable in the back of my legs. And I speak to those folks that, you know, have perhaps the tighter hamstrings. And then to come out of it, you need to bend the knees and slowly roll up, because you might feel a little bit lightheaded from it, and then stand for a moment. And I often stand, you can't see me with my arms, but with my elbows into my waist and my palms up, in a sense of it's called Hasta mudra of receptivity. So I'm opening and receptive again. And usually my kids are like aged 3 and 4. I'm out of the crazy stage, although it's still crazy. I can take a couple of minutes sometimes to be able to do those kind of things.
Yeah.
And, if I'm in dialogue with my daughter or my son and I feel the system starting to change, I will just own it. And I will just say to them, Mama's system's starting to change. I'm coming to a state of tension. And just to be aware of that, like when they're pushing me and they're pushing my buttons and they're hooking me in. So I give them a pre-warning, because, I don't want to blow. And sometimes it happens, that is life, like boom. And then it's like, system can sink back down. But I try not to get into that place, because for them it's not so useful and helpful. But it does happen, that is life. And of course, lastly, the precious breath, Ujjayi breath. If you're a yogi and know the breath, that calms the nervous system. So sometimes if I'm around, I might be just very calmly just doing that breath, just to soothe the cells, soothe the nervous system. So a few go-tos, sound, breathing, and an inversion would be my go-tos if I've just got a little tiny bit of time.
And can you also, just for a few minutes, just guide us through a short meditation, so that after the talk we get a bit of sense and experience of this more internal connected state?
Of course, I would be absolutely a pleasure to do that for everyone. And just to say, I have content on the site appleyoga.com. Like if people wanted to do longer versions of these kind of things, I have online content, as you mentioned kindly at the beginning. So, this is just a taster. And this particular meditation, I think is coming up in my new online course called The Elixir, which will be ready in a couple of weeks' time. So probably by the time the summit has started, you'll be able to access it on Apple Yoga. All right, so everybody, if you would like to close your eyes and just take a moment to find a comfortable seat, or you could lie down and do this if the body isn't so willing. The most important thing for your body, if you're upright, please, is to make sure that perhaps you're sitting on something. So it could be a chair, it could be your bed, it could be some yoga props. So the pelvis is elevated enough that it's higher than your knees. And that for many people helps to keep the spine really long and also the lungs open. And so that we can breathe really generously and therefore effectively for our whole system, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And then, my sweet souls, if you wouldn't mind just closing your eyes and taking a moment to yourself. And in that withdrawal of senses, we get to sort of interact with our world inside and just to notice what is going on. And so as you breathe here, if you could place a word on how you are feeling at the present moment, what would that word be? One word to describe how you are feeling currently, in the now. And all is welcome, both the shadow as well as the light. So if you're feeling fatigued, it's inclusive. We don't have to always seek for the positive. It's inclusive of what and how we are feeling right now. And actually, let's take that sound practice together. And so the first sound that we're going to be doing together is the sound of ah. And I'd love for you to put your yogic scientist hat on. So you've noted how you're feeling at the beginning of this practice before it starts. And then also at the end of the practice, I'll ask you the same question. And if the voice breaks and or cackles, that's totally fine. It's very normal. And so we come together, a full breath in, and the first sound that we're going to be doing is the sound of ah. Ah. Beautiful. Again, inhaling, same. Place attention in the sound. Last time, inhaling. Same again, but different sound. Inhaling. The sound of ooh. Ooh. Inhale when you're ready. You don't have to wait for my voice, and start when you are ready. Last time with this sound, take a long, full drink of breath, nose, throat, lungs. Beautiful. Last sound, coming up to the third eye space, the space between the eyebrows. It's the sound of mm. And so you breathe in through the nose, throat, lungs. Palate open, resonating that sound. Mm. Keep going. Good. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Good. And then long breath in again. And finally, long, full breath, inhale. Stay with your breath in and out. And so the art of this practice is softness and also length to the sound. And of course, we may not come together in that. And the last phase of this is the sound linked together. Ah, oo, and mm. And so when ready, take a drink of your breath, inhale. Ah, twice more. Drink of your breath, inhale. And finally, drink of breath. And taking a moment just to sit. In that dynamic ground of stillness that has opened up more obviously for you now. Of using sound vibration as a way to clear some of the surface layer of tension, the dialoguing of mind, to allow the system to dive a little deeper than that surface layer of who we are and who we believe we are, to the space that is always present in every given moment of life, the challenges, the joys. It's just a case of tapping into it, which is the joy of having a practice such as yoga in our life. So we get to tap into this space and nourish ourselves deeply so we don't drain and waste our precious life force, consistently on the periphery of the identity of who we are, or who we believe we are. And so as you sit for just a moment longer, how do you feel now at the end of this practice? If you could use one word to describe how that is, what would that be? And has it changed from before, when you were becoming curious about this science experiment on yourself, this yogic science experiments on yourself? And for me, you know, at the beginning, when I asked myself that question the same time, it was a case of feeling full. I've been talking to you guys, I just come back from the school run from my kids. Actually, just by doing that technique at the end with you, there it is again, that dynamic ground of space, of stillness, of ease, of joy. So if I describe how I'm feeling spacious now. Feel free to use that at any point that you feel would work, and you can do it with the eyes open, don't have to have eyes closed. So when you're ready, everybody, start to slowly come around. Yay. I've got beautiful sunshine in my face right now, which was a joy to have as I was doing this technique with you guys. How was it for you?
It was really, really beautiful, and such a nice, roundup for what we were talking about. And
Yes.
Yeah, it will
And
be.
it's tangible, right? I think that's the thing that is really important, that it's not this elusive sort of place that people can't connect to. And I think that that's the important part, that somebody needs to, and that's why I like to do it with this experiment of before and after. So there's the effect, and we're like, oh wow, there is the difference. And when we can see the difference, then there is the experience, and then the wish to do it again, because we understand. And yeah, we never lose this dynamic ground of stillness. It just comes covered with life.
Yeah, and it's it's so miraculous, such short, sweet practices, and then the feeling changes almost immediately. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we can interact in the world again from a different orientation point, from that space. And then we interact differently. We make different choices in the way that we interact. And we often interact in a more receptive way rather than a reactive way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a pleasure to have met you, and to everybody else that have been joining. Thank you for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Thank you for sharing your experiences and stories and tips. And I wish you and everybody joining us today a beautiful day filled with a lot of gratitude.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I look forward to that for all of you, and I look forward to seeing you when our paths cross.
Yes.
Bless you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.